And you're going to do the same thing with your entire page. All the way up. Make sure they touch. Okay, flip upside down, do the same thing. I'm going to show you in between here. Once again, inside, you're going to do the same thing with all of these, but you want to really make sure these ones touch. This is the point where you want to make sure they touch. So go a little slower, try not to go too fast on this part, because you want to have those all touching. Okay, when you get to this point, if you can see any little space where you accidentally did not get it quite touching, like here, I'm going to hold this a little bit closer, and I'm hoping that you can see. Do you see this little extra section in there? That's okay. This is where I would just say to go back, fill it in, get it solid. If you have some of your edges, you can see your lines, just go back and try and blend those in to make it kind of look like a bigger solid line. When you do this, it actually gives a better visual anyway to kind of make this line a little thicker. I actually prefer to do this on mine just to make this line a little bit thicker. I just think visually it gives it more depth. Remember, we're creating that illusion that this is a deep crevice in these worm shapes or these cone shapes. So I actually prefer to go back and fill that in a little bit. Okay? Here's the one that I did previously. Now I actually did this with a thicker marker, and that is fine as well. And once again, over here on this one, you can see a little bit of my lines where I touched. I would just go back, like I said, I just like to go back and kind of smooth those out. And I don't mind that that makes my line a little thicker, because like I said, I kind of like that because it gives that illusion of depth in there. Alright, from here we're going to do the same thing that we did on our cone shaped one as well. And we're going to take and do that same shading effect here. So you would take your colored pencil deeper, pressing harder on the edges and getting lighter with lighter pressure towards the center, even leaving some white if you want. Do the same thing all the way up. Now I have alternated just like I did on the cone shaped one, but if you wanted to do one entire column of the shape the same color, you could do that as well. You could make a pattern and do it 5 different colors and repeat that same pattern and do a color that way. You can do 3 colors or however many you wanted. Just play with it and see how it goes. Alright, now I'm not gonna, can you see the difference here a little bit? These ones I kept my lines pretty straight together, not so much wiggled as much. These ones I wiggled a little bit more. It just gives it a different, kind of a different visual effect. And me personally, I like the little bit crazier look one, but if you want to start with a little bit more simple one, you can do that as well. Alright, so like I said, these ones I have done several times in art class, so if you've been with me for a while, you may have done these ones. This is, next we're going to move on to ones that we may have not have done. I might have done this one a couple of times, but probably only as a filler. This one is really fun as well. This one definitely you want to use your fine tip marker or a regular ink pen. Like I said, a gel pen would work really well with this too. I think it would look really fun if you had one of the glitter pens. I think that would look really well. You could even use colored pencils with this, and you could just use a regular pencil, whichever you choose. So for this one, I want you to take and put on your paper, and I know this is going to be very hard for you to see, but I just want you to give me approximately 10 to 12 random dots on your paper. Anywhere you want. They can be close to the edge. They don't have to be close to the edge, but random dots around. They do not have to be even. It's actually better if they are not even. Now, you will probably end up putting more dots on your paper later, but this gets us started. So to get started, let's choose 2 dots. It doesn't matter where it is. I kind of like to start in the center myself, but you can choose wherever you want. From these 2 dots, we are going to make a thin football shape. And we are going to continue to build on that football shape and keep getting larger and larger. Now, you want to keep coming from that dot. So you may be connecting your line, instead of connecting completely to this dot, you may be connecting to this line to keep enlarging your piece. Once you've gotten it to approximately the size that you like, then I want you to find another dot close to it. I'm going to go directly from the bottom to this one here. Like I said, you can go wherever you want, starting again with that football shape. Taking it out as big as you want. You can always come back and add more. Once you get close to this previous one that you've done, you want to start connecting the lines. So I'm going to actually come off of the line from that top one, but I'm going to keep coming back and just adding onto it. Once I've gotten so close on that one, or big enough that I like, I'm going to skip and I'm going to do 2 others. And I actually think I'm going to connect a couple over here. And I'm going to make another dot just because I want one over here. And I'm going to start here and do these ones. Remember, coming from your dot, and eventually you're going to start connecting with the lines because you're going to run out of room. And if you are close to the paper, go all the way off. Let that continue off the edge of your paper. I want to connect one more. I'm going to add one in here. Just a little small one. And it's just personal preference. Keep adding as you go. Sometimes you'll add more than others. Okay? And it doesn't matter how big you make these. If you continue, I like to go about at least 4 to 6 wide before I start connecting. Okay, I might do one more over here, just one more random one, just to get me started. Alright, connect to these 2. And this is where we're going to start connecting all of them. Alright, I'm going to start connecting this one with this one. Starting with that small football shape. I like to go back and forth just to kind of give me an idea. Remember, you're going to start connecting those lines together. So come off of this line and you're going to connect as close as you can with this next one, but you will connect with this line because you want to make it appear, give that illusion that it's kind of bulging in between there. Once you get enough, and remember you don't have to go all the way to the dot, you can just connect with that line coming down to the bottom of your dot, and then move on to another one. Okay, I'm going to connect these two now. Now I can't quite go all the way to the top and make this a full football shape, so I'm going to come from the bottom side and I'm just going to go on up, and it's going to give the appearance that it's going underneath this one. And I'm actually going to turn my paper this way because I prefer to always draw my lines down. For me, it's much easier to drag than it is to push. And just keep coming down, connecting those lines. You always want to connect those lines. That way it looks like one is either behind or on top of. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to appear that it's connecting underneath of that one. I'm going to turn my paper again so it looks like I'm going down. It's much easier to drag. Okay, continuing by connecting those lines. I'm going to continue on this side, going out until I touch, and I touch another one. Now, when you get into a center area like this, let me show you. I'm going to finish over here for just a moment. Continue. I want to make this one a little larger. All right, when you get into a section like this, you can continue as if this bulb is continuing, but you want to come from that line and keep going and going until you have a very small section. When you have a very small section like this, you can actually fill it in solid. Okay? Make sure when you're doing your lines, like this line right here, if I were to connect it, it would actually come over, and then I would have a teeny tiny little area right there. So you can do, but make sure your areas are very small when you're doing it. Okay. I'm going to add a dot in the center because I don't really want to go this long of an area. I want to keep mine a little bit smaller. So same thing, I'm going to turn my page just because I like to drag better. I think it works better. And I'm going to pretend like I'm coming to this center point. Okay, so I'm meeting there in the very center, and I just continue to connect those lines. Do you see how it's building? Now I can connect these two. Sometimes it's easier when they're smaller, they're closer together. That's why I went ahead and made a secondary line, or a dot, I'm sorry, not a line, but a dot. And I'm just going to continue to connect those. And then you can move on to another one. I think I'll connect this one with this one. I'm going to flip my paper upside down. Once again, just so I can drag, because I like to drag. It's much easier. Keep working until you get all the way off of your page. So when you get to that point, like this one over here, just take it off your page. Just pretend there's a dot way down here. And just keep going. Just keep in mind you must always touch a line, so you're coming off of that dot or you're coming off of that previous one that you've already done. Keep connecting until you get to a very small area. When you have a very small area, you can fill that in. Okay? Now if you were to continue on with that, this is what you would get. So keep playing with it, see how you get. At this point, if you wanted to fill this in with color, you could do that as well. I like it just like this. Like I said, I think it really looks like almost garlic cloves or flowers, really close up, kind of like a Georgia O'Keeffe, where you would be looking at those flowers magnified. And I think that's a pretty fun op art to do. All right, so this next one is pretty fun as well. This is a new one. I definitely have not done this one before with any of the classes. This would be an op art using those geometric shapes, or it can also be considered a spiral art. And I have done this one on a larger scale, but once again, if you do this on a smaller scale, you'll get the hang of it a little bit better. And I'm going to show you a basic one right here, and I'm actually going to, and I do not have with me right now scissors, but I actually would like to make this more of a square just to show you the basic shape. And I'm going to trade papers since I've gotten mine messy. Okay. Like I said, if you want to start this maybe on a larger scale, you can do that. I actually like the smaller scale. Once again, I'm going to use my fine tip. You can use a ruler if you would like on this. If you want to get complete, exact, nice lines. I want you to actually outline your paper completely around the edges and make one box. So, but connect the box. Don't go all the way across like I did right there. But if you do, it's okay. Because the better you get, or the more, once you really grasp the concept, then you can really take off with this art. It's a lot of fun. You don't have to use a ruler, and I'm going to show you a little trick of how to keep your lines as straight as possible without using a ruler. I actually did all of these without using a ruler, and I like having straight lines. It always bugs me when I try to make a straight line and it gets a little wiggly, but believe it or not, I was able to do this without using a ruler, and it still looks really, really nice. So the basis of this one is to go from your corner. I'm going to start at this bottom corner, and I'm going to angle my ruler up just a little bit. Okay, starting at the corner, going up. And look, I used a ruler and I wiggled it. So that's all right, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, so we've made basically a small, really tiny, skinny, thin triangle. Okay, from this corner right here, we are going to do the same thing up to the top. We're going to start and make a very thin triangle line going to the top, and we're going to do the same thing completely around the entire square. I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible so you can get the idea. Once again, always starting at that same point and making a small triangle. Okay? Okay, we're back to where I started. At that same point, making a small triangle. You want it, they don't have to be the exact same size. It's all right. It's gonna happen. But try to get them similar. You don't want to have one really big one and one really skinny one. Just try to keep them similar. It's not going to be exact unless you start doing a bunch of measuring, and nobody has time for that. make sure you connect to that top line. You always want to connect at your lines. That's very important. You don't want to have any gaps in there. Okay, don't go too far also. Don't go all the way through your line. Try to stop directly at your line. Okay, now this is with using a ruler. Let me show you. And it will go a little faster without using a ruler. Once again, remember, I prefer to drag. I think it's always easier. You have more control. When you're going up, sometimes that is when you can lose control and your line will go wiggly. When you're coming down, actually, if you hold your pen or your pencil a little loose and just drag your entire arm, then you have more control than if you're just using your fingers directly. So from this line, remember, I'm wanting to make that angle. I'm actually going to go up here and I'm just going to put a little tiny dot just so I can see approximately how far over I want to go. I'm going to start here, but I'm not going to focus on my line or my pen. I'm actually going to be looking at my dot the entire time. Keep your eye on the dot while you're dragging, and you will be surprised at how much of a straight line you'll get, and it won't always be exact, and that's okay. But if you focus on that line where you're dragging, then you will come to it. And see, I didn't even do that well of a job, but that's all right. The more you do, the better you'll get the hang of it. Come straight to that dot. Make a dot over. Start from there. Try to focus on that little dot that you made and not where your pen is coming from, and that will really help. They're not going to be perfect, and that's okay, but they're going to be a lot straighter than you think just by focusing on that dot that you've made and not your pen. Here we go. You see how it's getting a little easier? Keep turning your paper as you go, focusing on that dot. By making that dot, you can also judge how far apart you want it. Once again, they're not always going to be the exact width unless you were to measure, and that's okay. But always touching, make sure you're always touching those lines. Do you see how we're getting that spiral effect now? Put a dot, focus on that dot, and keep turning. It's going to keep getting closer and closer in the farther you go. Really getting that spiral effect now. Always turning your paper. This way you don't get confused. Does it almost appear as if you would be going through some sort of a tunnel that is spiraling? Once you get close enough, you do not have to turn your paper. I actually just think it helps, especially when you're doing this trick that I showed you, but you can do it this way as well. But it also helps to prevent, when you're turning, it also helps to prevent you from not putting your dot on the right line, to make sure you're doing it the same way. But do you see how you're basically making a square the whole way. There we go. Did you see that spiral effect? That's pretty cool, isn't it? I think it's pretty awesome. Now, to make it a little more fun, here's what we can do. So with this one, you can get pretty creative here. You see how I've got multiple spiral effects going? And let me show you my larger one that I did. Because this larger one that I did is actually broken up into several sections. So we can start by just taking, let's go ahead, same thing. Let's go ahead and outline real close to the edge. If you want to use that same principle down here, put a dot, follow that dot. Helps you make a nice, fairly straight line. You don't have to on this part. If you don't want to, that's fine. All right. Now I'm going to take my ruler on this. I'm not going to measure. I'm just guesstimating, just eyeballing the center. I'm going to divide my rectangle here into 4 squares. All right. And this is where you're going to start getting these patterns like this. Same principle. I'm going to start in this corner. And I'm going to come down. And I'm going to turn my paper, because turning my paper helps me to keep track of where I'm going the whole way. Putting my dots. Did not quite come to that dot, did I? Sometimes it doesn't work as well as you think, but that's all right. All the way around. It's a little time consuming, it's a little tedious, but you get a really big result. Continually turning your paper, putting that dot. Once again, you can use a ruler if you'd like to get really nice straight edges. Sometimes I think with this small scale, it's almost a little too tedious to use the ruler. Maybe I'm just a little impatient and want to go a little faster. If you were doing a full scale paper, I would definitely suggest using a ruler, because the longer line that you have to do on your own, you definitely are more likely to get a wiggly or crooked line. And this definitely looks the best with lines that are as straight as possible. I'm not doing my dots right now because I'm just eyeballing where I want to go on that line. And that is why I'm not putting the dot there, but this also will help me go a little bit faster so you can see what we're going to do. Okay. Now, I'm going to move over to this section, and I kind of want them to match. So I started at this corner. On this one, I'm going to start at the opposite corner. So I'm not going to start directly down here. I'm going to start at this opposite corner, and I'm going to do the same thing, except for, let me turn it this way. So I started there and I went larger. So here I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to go larger this way, which I don't like doing because I like to drag. Okay, now don't get confused. I'm just doing this opposite, and I'm turning my paper the opposite direction that I was turning it the last time. Okay, same thing, you're still doing triangles. I'm still just kind of eyeballing where I'm going and following that mark, or once again, you can still put your dot there so you get a better idea of where you want that line to stop, how far over you want it to go. Like I said, it kind of helps give you that better idea. I'm going a little faster, so I'm not using my dot, but I'm still trying to focus on that opposite line. I'm not focusing on my pen or where it's going. I'm trying to focus on where I want to be. Do you see the pattern that I'm making? Do you see we're getting that